And welcome back to another edition of Ultimate Politics down here at Mile High Sports Radio Station, 1510 AM. We got a great show today, and my guest is House District 36 Representative Morgan Carroll, who is now running for State Senate District 29. Morgan, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ray. Glad to be here.
Tell us some of the things you're hearing from the people out in the community about how they're feeling about things right now.
There is no doubt about it that the economy is definitely tops on everyone's mind. But what people were talking about was really stunning. First of all, I mean, we are seeing across almost every major index drops, historic drops, consistently 32% down, 30% down. You have to realize in markets, 1% can be extremely significant. So when you're talking about 30s consistently across every major index, we have not seen housing prices drop nationally like this since the Depression. Now, there have been pockets of housing depreciations in pieces. What is unusual now is that we're seeing a national trend on housing dropping, and gold is staying pretty constant. But people want to know, can they sell their home? Are they going to qualify for credit? How are we going to pay back $700 billion? Why do we have, the first AIG bailout with the insurance giant there, when they're spending $440,000 on having a gigantic party at the taxpayer's expense? I mean, I think a lot of people want their money back. Then, as if that wasn't enough, there was some hunting trip, I think, that they just recently also took to Japan after they received more money. So there is really a lot of, well, first of all, I think the $9.7 trillion debt that's now $10.7 trillion, I think people are deeply concerned about how this is going to get paid back.
Now people are saying, really, there is a recession here. It's here. It's not a probability. It's now reality.
When the country goes into debt like this, they are borrowing money. It is not an abstraction. The money is coming from somewhere. And the point about having so much of the United States money coming from other countries, at some point we are becoming a wholly owned subsidiary of other countries around the world. And while I'm a proponent of realizing that we do have international commerce, I do realize we have fluid borders. I have no issues with internationalism. But there comes a point, just like in any, if I can use the corporation model, there comes a point when someone becomes a large enough shareholder.
Hostile takeover.
Or you got a hostile takeover, or at least they have a seriously disproportionate influence on public policy, on foreign policy, on international affairs. Your country, your policy, your debt is no longer entirely your own. And I think in a democracy and for a country like the United States of America, this is very sobering. I do not think this should be glossed over.
The myth of the free market that we have now is when it's gain, it's private gain. When a private company is making a lot of money, it's private gain, free market, theirs. When a large company is losing money and is going into debt and is in trouble, then it's public debt. So when they're doing well,
right,
they're taking the money.
That's
and when
exactly
they're doing
it.
Poorly, they're asking for tax, for a handout from the public market. From the public, and that's got to stop. There are some benefits to publicly made goods and commodities, like our highway systems, maybe our healthcare system, maybe things that people can't pay for all on their own need to come together and work out a common way to do things, and that's what community is all about. It's not socialism. It's what makes sense.
Yeah, I think the rhetoric has gotten so charged it's not useful. Anytime you have a public government that is by, for, and about the people with public funds, and there's always been some things we can do better together than separately, and our founders knew that, and that's how we built this country, because there is such a thing as an appropriate public works project. There's also such a thing as basically, we have to look at balance of power here. We realized that we needed checks and balances between the branches of government. But besides just the executive, legislative, and judicial, we need the people to be a check and balance on lobbyists. We also have a role for government to be a check and balance on the private sector, and vice versa. And I think part of where we've gone to such excess is that we have equated virtually no limits and no oversight on corporate America at all as somehow being an inherent good. And what we've seen is that can basically impacts housing, that impacts jobs, that impacts that has such a profound effect. Everybody who amasses power needs some kind of check and balance to it if it's going to be a fair, equitable, and democratic society. The finances on, you said water or public roads. Look, people hate toll roads for good reason. It is not okay to use, for example, public eminent domain takings to give private property rights away from one person over to a private developer. Using government power to hand it over to private corporations is inherently problematic. It is appropriate for us to sit down and have a very sane conversation about what are public works projects and where does the private sector do best. In the area of commodities overall, I generally think that the private sector does best. But when we are talking about licensing, oversight, dealing with public safety, health, and well-being, when we're talking about a justice system, those are fundamentally public things. And the problem with privatizing too much is citizens can't vote at a corporation.
Tell us about the bill that you worked on most recently on health care, the FAIR bill.
This is really a big one. The FAIR Act passed last session, and I think any betting man or woman would not have predicted it would have been able to pass. When you talk to people over and over again about it is too expensive, I am paying a lot more for a lot less every year, we can't keep doing that. That is not working. That is not delivering a good healthcare system. Colorado actually had one of the lowest obesity rates, lowest diabetes rates, one of the lower cancer rates, one of the higher physical activity rates. By every single major health indicator, we should have been one of the lowest premiums. What's really been offensive for the Colorado consumer is they have continued to have double-digit increases every year. So the FAIR Act basically meant that insurance companies now, for the first time in Colorado, had to actually justify their rates before rate hikes could take effect.
For those people that want to get involved with your candidacy, help your campaign, or find out about some of these issues, that get some help on these issues, where's your website? How can people get involved?
Best way for people to get in touch with me is through my website, which is senmorgancarroll.com. It's S-E-N, short for Senator, Morgan Carroll, 2 R's, 2 L's. .com. I keep a pretty active blog on the website too, which is a little bit more editorial version and pretty complete issues page. Feel free to call with any questions or suggestions you have. My cell phone is out there publicly. My cell phone is 303-726-1742. And the point is really, in some ways, our work as citizens begins on Election Day. It doesn't end there.
With Morgan in office, I think we'll have someone that'll work out very well for us. And thank you so much, Morgan.
Thank you, Wade.
Signing off, this is Wade, and we'll see you next time.